Hmm.
Video? We're on. Hello, Madam Chief of Staff.
How are you doing?
We're doing well. How are you?
I'm all right.
Everybody healthy and happy in your family?
Yeah. That's why I go to work every day, because they're here.
Folks, everybody can hear you, so.
Okay.
Hello, Mr. Chair.
How are you, sir?
We're doing well. How are you?
Good, good.
Excellent.
Should they bring us the whole thing up or
No, when they hear you start.
not? Good afternoon and welcome to this session of Wilmington City Council's Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 22nd. My name is Freel. I'll be hosting the meeting this afternoon. This is the fourth in a series of budget hearings performed by the City Council. Joining us today also is Councilmember Linda Gray of the 1st District and Councilman Charles Harley of the 4th District. We also have with us Chief of Staff Tanny Washington from the Mayor's Office and Chief of Staff Marshall Bass-Knight from City Council Office. As folks know, the Mayor presented his fiscal year 2021 budget back in March. In that budget, he proposed no tax increases or increases in the water sewer fee. However, the budget was constructed prior to the COVID-19 crisis that we are now working ourselves through. So when you go through these hearings, you will hear department directors talk about some areas that they feel they might be able to have additional cuts if need be. Most likely, we will introduce a substitute ordinance at the end of May for a vote. As folks know, the city code states that we have to pass a balanced budget by the end of May. And then most likely we will revisit the fiscal year 2021 budget probably in the fall with additional amendments. I will also tell you that the administration and council will aggressively pursue any federal dollars that come into the state or Newcastle County, try to help us defer some of the additional expenses and lost revenues that were occurring at this time. All right, so I also want to mention that we've been joined by we've been joined by Council Member Chris Johnson from the 7th District and Councilman Ciro Adams at large. And we've also been joined by Councilmember Rasheen Dixon, also at large. Is there anyone I missed? Okay. We're going to follow the same format. We're going to have a brief overview by the Office of Management and Budget, and then we'll have any opening remarks and presentation by the Director of the Office of Economic Development, and then we will jump into questions and answers. There will be a period at the end of the hearing for public comment. You will be given 3 minutes to make your comments on the budget that we are discussing. At the conclusion of this hearing, we will take a brief break, and then we will come back and do the Department of Parks and Recreation. This is limited to a 90-minute session. I am asking council members to keep their questions to budgetary matters. Any programmatic or constituent issues should be addressed in other forums. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the Office of Management Budget for a brief overview of the changes in this year's budget.
Good afternoon, Chairman Freel, President Shabazz, and honorable members of council. I will be presenting the budget as it was originally proposed before the COVID-19 crisis began, and Director Flynn will be discussing any potential modifications to the budget as a result of the coronavirus. The Office of Economic Development is requesting a total FY 2021 general fund budget of $2.7 million. This represents a $713,000 or 21% decrease from FY20. Personal services decreased by $121,000. This is largely because the Special Assistant to the Mayor for Employment Initiatives position was retitled Special Assistant to the Mayor and transferred to the Mayor's Office Administrative Division, resulting in a savings of $146,000 in OED. These savings were slightly offset by a citywide 2% cost of living adjustment for eligible employees and mandatory annual reviews for executive and managerial employees. MS&E increased by a net $6,200 or 4%, largely because of a $5,000 increase to consultants, which will fund additional architectural and engineering support for development and infrastructure projects, and a $1,500 increase to both travel and subsistence and registrations to fund training and educational workshops for OED staff. Finally, debt service decreased by $600,000 due to a reduction in costs associated with a projected debt refinancing. This concludes my presentation, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Jeff Flynn, who's the Director of the Office of Economic Development in the Mayor's Office. Jeff, are you with us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Greetings to you. Greetings to Madam President, and greetings to all of our friends on City Council. We're happy to be here with you today, and we wish you continued health and safety during this COVID event. And before we get started with our questions and answers, we were asked to give an overview of our departmental mission and our 3 key objectives and some of the metrics. Let me also mention that I'm joined by 2 of my colleagues here in the office, Mr. Dwayne Sims. Mr. Sims is the manager of our small minority business efforts, and Mr. Sean Park, who's a relatively new addition to our office within 6 months. Mr. Park is our project manager here in the office. Next slide, please. You can see our departmental vision, very broadly stated. Our goal is to grow the city economy, increase incremental revenues to the city general fund, increase economic throughput to the city, attract new investment to the city, and increase the quality of life for city residents, folks who work in the city, and visitors. And we do that by developing varieties of industry, using products and services from our office and from other statewide agencies to attract more people to spend money in our city through resident work or play. We like to measure our performance through our top 3 priorities, which are attracting private investment, increasing city tax revenue base, wage tax and property tax, and growing and empowering our small and minority business sector. How do we measure that? We measure it by tracking all of the major investment in our city, whether it's business investment, development in construction investment, or even investment by DelDOT or other state agencies or federal bureaus. We also measure our wage tax, property tax revenue, new and retained jobs. And lastly, for our small minority businesses, we measure numbers served, number of DBEs registered in our database, and funds spent on direct incentives or indirect assistance. And the way, well, you can see here is a dashboard, if you will. The private investment that we're tracking right now is across about 50 projects, approximately 400 million. We also track as a subset of that 400 million the projects that we're either directly or indirectly involved with, projects that we may have provided some technical assistance on or actually have direct city incentives or have utilized state or federal incentives and directed them to the project. That $163 million number measures that part of the 400 million that we're involved with. You can also see OED investment, approximately 2 million, and that's physical development. That would be construction and land development that the office has a part in. It's approximately 1.3 million, and business new or retained business development, approximately 973,000. And then on the third line, you see our small minority business metrics, number of businesses assisted, dollars spent, that's direct from our budget on small minority business assistance, DBE certificates, and then the last number, 29 graduates from a small business writing class that we put on. And later on in the presentation, we'll talk a little bit more about these metrics and our efforts. Next slide, please. So how do we track all of what I've stated? The old-fashioned way, we use an Excel database, and we enter line by line exactly what we're spending our time and resources on. We categorize it and filter it, and that's how we come up with our reporting. Some of you are familiar with this database, those who have been in to visit with us. For those who are on City Council who are interested in learning more, we invite you in, and we'll set up a time or a Zoom call to go through exactly how we track our performance here in the office. And then next slide, please. Lastly, another shot from our dashboard. This infographic talks or speaks directly to our job tracking activities. And that concludes my overview of our office's mission and our primary objectives and metrics. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's jump into it. Could you discuss any current vacant positions you have, duration of vacancy, and time frame for filling them?
We currently have one of 5 positions vacant. Our deputy director position has been vacant for a year, and we've decided as a team and as an administration that the position will remain vacant and unfunded to offset projected decreases in revenues from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, discuss the change in regular salaries and healthcare prompting 110,000 savings in those account lines.
The savings is the result of reducing the FTE count in our office. Those of you may remember Lassie Freeman, Special Assistant to the Mayor for Employment Initiatives. That position was retitled and transferred to the Mayor's office, which led to a savings of $146,000 in benefits, salaries, and associated costs. That savings was offset by the 2% cost of living adjustment, which is how we arrive at the savings, the net savings of $121,000.
Okay, discuss the $1.25 million funding proposed for the Economic Development Strategic Fund. There's a couple parts to this question.
Yeah, the first, we've decided to sequence our answer according to the parts of the question. I believe the first part.
Specify the amount of the current available fund balance.
That's right. So the remaining balance is $460,000. So if you were to look up this account line in Munis, you'd see approximately $400,000. As most of you are aware, a portion of those dollars are committed through existing contracts with companies and businesses that we've entered into incentive agreements with in the past. So at the moment, there's a liability of approximately $350,000 for 3 contracts whereby we'll be making payments to these incentive contracts in the next 2 to 3 years. The third line of $110,000, that is the difference between the existing balance in Munis and our future commitments. And then the pipeline number represents 4 projects on which we are of high certainty, a high degree that these projects will be funded, and meaning that we will go from discussions into a contractual agreement. And that dollar figure is $632,000. In fact, of those 4 pipeline, two will convert to contract by the end of May. And those are actually minority business projects that we'll talk in more detail about later on in the presentation. But you can see, and as you know, Mr. Chair, we've been managing our strategic fund on a cash flow basis, meaning we're comfortable entering into new contracts that take us into a deficit position because our cash balance, because we still have a cash balance that won't be spent down for for future years. I think we've managed fund in this capacity since the last infusion in 2009, and we've done a good job at being able to say yes to new projects, even though we know that they're going to create a future deficit. So in a moment, I think we're going to get to a question about the infusion that we're seeking in this current budget. The next part of the question is a history of infusions into the fund. Just by way of background, the enabling legislation and initial funding were passed in 2002. And you can see we've had a number of fundings since then. Each of these fundings is a legislative action by City Council, and then goes to fund this multi-year strategic fund account line. We've all totals invested about $15 million, and it's resulted in about $100 million in wage taxes across 55 companies since 2002. And that concludes our answers to questions.
You want to go over this last slide for question 3, where you talk about the 1.25?
Yes, this budget contains a transfer from the tax stabilization reserve portion of the general fund to the economic development strategic fund. We're seeking $1.25 million, and we will be, earmarking or reserving or setting aside $250,000 just for minority businesses. Now, it's important to note here that even though we designate a set aside for minority businesses, the total fund is available for any business, minority or otherwise. So if we were to spend down an earmark of $250,000, that doesn't preclude us from using the general strategic fund balance for minority business activities. Next slide, please.
I just wanted to mention that we've been joined by Council President Hanifa Shabazz. All right, question number 4, discuss the amount of funds proposed for the Minority Business Development Program. And once again, there were several parts to that question.
Yes, Mr. Chair, for this question, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Dwayne Sims.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and of course, a good afternoon and best wishes to everyone on the call. Thank you for the opportunity to present. As our director mentioned, my name is Dwayne Sims, and I handle small and minority business development on behalf of the office. So I'll dive right into the questions. You'll see, if we can, at the top of the slide, I want to point out, I was before you, of course, last year, and we had approximately $125,000 as a previous balance in that minority business set aside. I'm happy to report that the current available balance in that set aside at the moment, as we begin to close out fiscal year 20, is now at 0. I did commit to you all the last time I was presenting a commitment to ensure that we work with minority businesses and build up the trust in the community. Of course, I was new to the role, and I'll talk on that in a moment about building equity in the minority business community. However, happy to report the current available balance is now 0. As you saw in the previous slide, the committed funds are at $227,500. That's across several different projects, some of which we are either currently have already spent, or for that matter, in very advanced negotiations on the contract. My director just mentioned a moment ago that we have several that we expect to close by the end of May. So we're really excited about that. One is a physical development project here in the city. The other 2 are our standard and traditional business development projects. So we're really excited about that. As you already see and know, Infusions since inception, $225,000. Those were broken out in the previous slide. And then, of course, also happy to promote, to mention that we have a budget for marketing and promotion as well for the program, that being the Minority Business Development Program. And of course, again, I think it's very important, my director mentioned a moment ago, right, these funds in the strategic fund are fungible. So even though you see we only had $125,000 left to spend in the set aside, we've already exceeded that. And if I've got anything to say about it, we'll continue to do the same as we move forward. I mean, we're working hard to try to make sure that folks are aware that funds are available. Last but not least, the final bullet point is a question around the disparity study. As you see, we referenced the consulting budget. We'll be talking about that in later slides, but I do want to take a moment to highlight that. I know there's been some conversation around consulting budget, around disparity study, and of course the desire to see that play out here in the city of Wilmington, an assessment of obviously our businesses that we have in the city. They're obviously where they are in terms of capacity and what have you. We're in full support of that out of this office. And I think it's very important, though, that obviously we haven't been asked necessarily to lead that initiative. I know it's been in conversations with City Council, of course, in the administration as well. It's been brought to our attention. And I want you to know, of course, and to hear from me and obviously on behalf of the office that we're in support of that. We think if we were to lead that initiative or obviously play a particular role in that initiative, like all things, it's important to determine, what the end game is really to be. I think it's very important. So, of course, a project scope of work, and what does that scope of work entail? What are we trying to assess and determine? I don't need to tell you folks in City Council, of course, you have a academia, a professional really in your midst, and I'm sure that you should be working on that initiative as well. So the short story there is that we do have a consulting line budget item. We intend to utilize that in support of the initiative, and you have my support here as the manager for Minority Business Development. Next slide, if you will.
Yeah, I want to just mention here now, if I could.
Yes, sir.
We don't have a question here, but at the end, I would like you and Jeff, all your folks, to talk a little bit about what initiatives you're trying to initiate during this COVID-19 to help existing small businesses here in Wilmington.
Sure.
We'll wait till the end to discuss that.
Will do.
All right. Discuss any financial support, resources, or initiatives within your department pertaining to the disadvantaged business enterprises. Specify the plan for marketing.
Indeed. I think it's important to note, we've done this in the past, it's very easy to conflate the two programs, right? So we have the Minority Business Program, which we just spoke about, and then obviously the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program is a city government program, right? So it's citywide, and it's a supplier diversity initiative specific to city spend, we'll call it, or city contracts that are being let by respective departments, hence the need for, obviously, citywide government support. You'll see some bullet points here that just try to lay the foundation, if you will, to differentiate minority business development, which we do as a part of our normal course of business here in the Office of Economic Development, and then the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, which is obviously a multi-department initiative. The DBE program, as I mentioned in the second bullet point, interdepartmental, right, requires close communication, coordination amongst various departments. Some of those departments, of course, may be like Public Works, for example, or for that matter, Procurement Division and Finance Department. We have a role in this office in providing support, advocating, but most importantly, per city code, methods of assistance to support City of Wilmington and DBE community. If we go to the next slide, if you will. And so what I wanted to show here are different types of methods of assistance. And I want to pause here for just a moment to really highlight how, since taking on this role almost 18 months ago now, I think it's been very important for me. My initiative has been to really work with departments internally, the DBE community externally, but also the prime contracting business community externally as well, and be a bridge to build relationships. What I'm really trying to get to here is a culture change and push the envelope of the existing culture to create essentially a new culture of responsiveness and of course reliability in these programs, right? So how do we do that? That's what you're looking at here in this slide. So increasing DBE communication, right? So we know that oftentimes DBEs are really small, 1, 2, 3 person run companies. And they may not have the resources that some of our larger businesses have to try and really just have the opportunity to have folks who administrative support, if you will, to really research and look for contracting opportunities. So as a result, what I wanted to do was up the level of communication that you see in sub-bullet point number 1, coming out of this office directly to our minority business community, our disadvantaged business enterprises that are on our list, to let them know about these opportunities, first and foremost. If they don't know about them, they can't participate, right? It's a very simple premise. Number 2 is attend the contract pre-bid meetings. So again, these are all activities that I'm taking out of this office, personally showing up at these pre-bid meetings to ensure that we relay how important the DBE program is to our contractors who are there, Third, you'll see that we, of course, go to the bid opening meetings, make sure things are being run properly and in accordance with the guidelines. Contract reviews, DBE advocacy, as I mentioned, internally amongst our departments. That's starting to pay off and has been paying off for some time. I can't tell you, I get a lot of calls. Just to name a few departments, Parks and Rec, for example, or for that matter, in Public Works, and of course in real estate and housing, have been very supportive of reaching out to get the list of our disadvantaged business enterprises in the city. DBE recruitment, so external opportunities. You know, the best word of mouth is really through the DBEs that are having success. And then, of course, an initiative that I've taken on, which is to retain 100% of our DBEs who are on this list. You know, there are several reasons why DBEs, or any business for that matter, or any, participant may fall out of a program, right? One of the ones that I don't want to see happen is because they don't see value in the program. So that's important. My goal is 100% retention of every DBE. There's a 2-year certification period, okay? So as I came into the role, I want to look at what DBEs have already fell off the list, and then who do we have that's getting ready to maybe fall off in the coming months, 3-4 months out. Make sure that we reach out to them up front. They know about the initiatives we're taking, and they understand the value of the program. That should increase the opportunity for retention. So that's a question here. So very, very important. What I want to touch on is that you'll see this slide here. If we do all of these things, right? if we address the culture changes, if we work with the external partners, if we really build bridges with our prime contractors, what can that actually look like? Everyone Can Achieve was one of the very first DBEs I met with upon taking this role in the office. Worked very closely with their owner and the president of the company. Of course, as I do shared information with him, as I shared with all of our DBEs on the list. And there's several I can name that have taken it very seriously, the initiatives that I was trying to roll out here. This gentleman went above and beyond, shows up at every pre-bid meeting he can. He's at every bid opening, whether he wins or not, right? He's out there building bridges with the prime contractors. I'm happy to report, and he sent this to me, these pictures were sent to me unsolicited, right? Which I hope is a reflection of the effort that I put into the program with him and others. And he was, I'm proud to say, he was the Dbe of the Year. I want to stress this, right? Dbe of the Year. Right? One of the proponents of building up the DBE program here was about stressing to the DBEs that there are a handful of large, if you will, prime contractors. And so it's very important. It's not just about being in the city of Wilmington and getting a city of Wilmington contract, which is our focus, right? But many of these larger contractors are also bidding on state work, such as street paving that's happening in our city, and we've been seeing this go on, well throughout the year. So the point I'm making here is that building a bridge on city contracts leads to bridges in other contracts at the state level as well, and potentially county level. I'm happy to say Everyone Can Achieve has been able to leverage that strategy that I laid out for them, and of course you see the result here. All right. I'll move on very quickly to a couple of other slides here on question 5. So steps towards marketing, right, in the DBE community. So some of you who've been here for a while, you may remember the Disadvantaged Business Exchange. I began digging through some of the records. We found some collateral, and I think I've been speaking with our Director Flynn, and we're going to look to revive this program, the Disadvantaged Business Exchange, Diverse Business Exchange. What is that, right? So really what it boils down to, there were a host of initiatives in the previous Diverse Business Exchange, the iteration of that. What we're going to really focus on here is going to be a couple of key initiatives, particularly around networking. So further to my point about building bridges, right? What we really want to do is make sure that the relationship is solid. It's about being responsible and responsive. Even if we look at our code underneath DBE, that is the requirement. Responsive and responsible bidding, right? So the key here is to try to make sure that we build these bridges for relationships, because in all business, it's just about relationships at the end of the day. I don't care if I'm working with, Uber as a part of my role in Citigroup, or if I'm working with a small mom and pop business off of Market Street. It's relationships, it's trust, and making sure that we understand that anything that we do is going to be done and done well, right? So the Diverse Business Exchange is going to really try to build up this networking community of diverse businesses that are primarily DBEs in our system, but connecting them to opportunities, all right, help facilitate those networking opportunities with the larger contractors here in our city and in our state. Secondarily, as a program we're already running, which is our Small Business Success Series program. That's a business plan writing course. We just completed last spring our 54th iteration of that course. So it's a long-standing course here. It's run twice a year as well. So those are the steps towards marketing. Last but not least, we'll move forward, thank you. We have some of the steps in the future. So what does it look like moving forward? The salient point really that I want to drive home here in this slide is that, you know, this office is participating in a significant way in meaningful relationships and partnerships with activities that are happening about building capacity in the minority business community, whether that's the Tech Talent Pipeline Project, for example. And that initiative is about building diversity in the tech sector. We know that here in the city of Wilmington, we have a significant portion of jobs in the city are fintech related, right? So how do we prepare minority businesses to support that sector? How do we prepare individuals and from our minority communities to participate in jobs in that sector? So I'm on that committee as well. Jumpstart Wilmington Advisory Board participation. That's about building up capacity specific to minority real estate developers. Slight variation, slight nuance here from minority contractors, right? We want to build to the next level now, beyond contracting, where we have developers who are minority-owned developing companies. How do we build the capacity to create those kinds of opportunities for minority developers here in our city? Last but not least, Equitable Wilmington Advisory Board participation. I'm on that board as well. So that's about, of course, as you see there, focus on minority business startups, business growth as well. So that's coming out of the Pro Neighborhoods Grant, True Access Capital, Scenair, and NCall came together for that. And so we're sitting on that advisory board and participating to help build out that program, and where those dollars are spent in our select neighborhoods like West Center City, West Side, East Side, and North Wilmington. All right. And last but not least, that final slide for question number 5 is just a list of several businesses that represent both our DBE community as well as the minority business work that we've been doing as a part of our standard work coming out of this office. So just an example, you'll see there from all over, different sectors, and I have some basic statistics if there's a question around the types of businesses in our DBE as well. And that concludes my answers for question 5.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. That was a good presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. I'll yield back to our director for questions.
Hang on a second. I think we have a question here, and I think that's Councilmember Michelle Harley. Councilman Harley, do you have your hand raised?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Councilman Freel. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I agree with you that was a great presentation, Mr. Sims, and the diverse business exchange sounds really, really exciting. So I really appreciate those buzzwords that you were using, networking, building relationships, being responsible, being responsive, building capacity. I think all of that was just really awesome. But my question to you is this, do you have, some type of way to measure this program? So for example, are you looking at starting out with 5 or 10 businesses? Like, do you just have some type of metric? Because a lot of times, we all are doing good work, but sometimes we don't always measure the work that we're doing to continuously improve what we're doing. So that's my first question around measuring.
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman Harley, for the kind words. I appreciate that. As it stands now, not as of yet, we're still building out the program. And so it's still fairly recent that I pulled up some of the materials for Diverse Business Exchange. I looked at it initially, I would say about 7 months ago, about six to 7 months ago. And of course, trying to see what was done in the previous iteration. We do have metrics around performance, right, in terms of the DBE community. And that's something that I've just been tracking quite candidly on my own because we don't have anything systemic. But specific to the Diverse Business Exchange marketing opportunity, I think first things first is we want to find out, what are the programs that are needed? With educational, social, building the bridge, of course, can take the form of either, or both for that matter. So for me, it's about one, building out the curriculum, finding who our resources are for the program as well, and then of course, tracking and reporting will be a component to that as we continue to look to build it out. So I don't have a direct answer on how to measure it yet, but I can tell you that as we build out the goals of the program, you'll see that, of course, measuring those achievement towards those goals will be a component of it as well.
Okay, understood. My second question is that I think it's also great that you had a goal of spending. I think you said $125,000. On the different minority businesses. Is that correct?
That number that is currently being spent, I believe, was 227.5. 125 was the previous balance carryover.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I think it's really great that you are making headways with getting out there and helping those different businesses. So of course, businesses being a large part of the 4th district, I'm always getting questions about, how does the economics and development organization help businesses and things of that nature. So
Yes.
offline, maybe what I can do is get a list, because you mentioned a number of businesses that were helped. And so offline, get a copy of those businesses, because it's always nice for me to be able to have reference points in terms of, in general terms, this is how the city is working with different businesses and especially minority businesses. So offline, I would like to get a copy of those businesses that you have helped and supported.
Oh, be my pleasure. I will work with our project manager, Sean Park, and we'll make sure that you have that list. It's part of what it's the origination source information, if you will, source information for our metrics that Director Flynn reported on at the outset in his overview. So I'll be happy to make sure that you get that list as well. And also, as part of our presentation on slide 19, you'll see a snapshot of some of those companies that make up that 227.5 as well.
Yeah, I did see that. Thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Dixon, did you have a question?
Yes, Councilman Freel. One, also, I think I just wanted to send the same supplements as my colleagues. Dwayne, you did a fantastic job of taking up the leadership there on the things that we've been asking you to help us out on, making sure that minority businesses and disadvantaged businesses have the resources they need and expended the money as we asked. I just had a question around I know the Jumpstart was also a part of Scenario started that one, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Because I just heard about that yesterday, so I'm glad to hear that you guys are a part of that group as well.
Thank you.
And then also I know you mentioned that, and I'm glad to hear that you guys have signed on to help out with the disparity study.
Sure.
Is there I didn't see that there was a cost there, but is there a cost that you guys are already have aside, or are you going off of what we put in our budget for it?
So we mentioned on our slide, we listed there that we have obviously our consulting budget is where we plan on obviously allocating funds from as needed. I think the goal here, again, for us is going to be, what is the scope of the study? What are we trying to accomplish? What are we looking to measure? And then, of course, then when the number comes back, then obviously we'll make a determination based on the availability of funds in the consulting budget as applicable there. Yeah.
We'll look forward to that discussion and conversation. I think that's definitely needed as we're figuring out as we do a disparity study what that really looks like and the outcomes, and that's definitely needs to be all filtered out. So happy to be a part of those conversations too.
Indeed, likewise, I'm excited to participate.
Okay, I don't see any more hands at this time, so we'll go ahead and move on to question 6. Discuss the planned use of $100,000 budgeted for consultants Specify the planned use of the remaining $60,000 from this year's fiscal 20 budget, and specify any funds to assist with minority business development or disadvantaged business enterprise.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of City Council, you can see our proposed uses in front of you. Just as a reminder, one characteristic that's a little different that differentiates OED from other departments, in our consulting budget, we don't use our consulting budget to sort of support outside resources or FTEs or third-party employees, perhaps like some other departments do. Our consulting budget every year is used for us to react to opportunities or requests from the administration or even City Council. So recall that we can't tell you, exactly which consultants we are going to use this $100,000 for, but we can tell you that they're generally going to be used for these categories. Architectural and engineering support for projects. We'll give you a few examples of how we do that in a moment. 15,000 of the 100,000 is for Miss Audrey. She is our consultant that puts the curriculum together for our business writing course. And she's done that now for many years. And so that $15,000 represents the fee that we need to pay her to put the curriculum together and run the course. And then we've set aside internally $13,000 for minority business marketing and the diverse business exchange that Dwayne mentioned. Some of you may remember Miss Danita Thomas. Danita held the position prior to Mr. Sims, and it was under her leadership that the diverse business exchange was branded and started, and Dwayne is going to pick that up and run with it. And we'll need some funding for that. That $13,000 will be matched probably 3-to-1 by funds we raise from prime contractors and other larger businesses, just like we did a few years ago under Danita's leadership. So that is the explanation of our request for $100,000. And I believe on the next slide we have some examples of how we've spent our consulting budget this year.
Council President Shabazz. Council President, do you have your hand up?
I'm sorry, I had myself on mute.
Okay. Did you have a question?
I do, but it's back to Mr. Sims. I apologize. I couldn't get my hand off in time to make my comment at that time. But first, I just would like to just say thank you for the great presentation that the whole department has brought forth, and then knowing the progress that's been made through the department in addressing our economic development initiatives is very inclusive and through all of the opportunities for various levels of people and businesses. And Mr. Sims, I'm glad to see that you, and I knew you were on board with the diversity study and the progress you made in 18 months to kind of answer some questions and already laid a foundation for us to get those scopes of services and know exactly what we have to do. Is listen from the work you've done in those 18 months. We might not have to do as much as we thought we needed to do because you've dug some holes and answered some questions in your work and gave us a path to go forward so that we could address the disparities that we've known that are existing in our working with DBEs and minority businesses. So thank you for your agreement, your understanding, and agreeing to work along with us in that disparity studies. And hopefully with that work you've already laid a ground for, it might not cost us as much as disparity studies could cost us. So I just wanted to make those comments and look forward to working with you and recognizing the expertise we have in our department through our strategy person in Mr. Barbe.
Thank you very much, Council President. I appreciate the sentiment. Thank you.
Okay. Can you discuss the $30,000 budgeted for community activities pertaining to grants to agencies and donation community services, specify any funds to assist with minority business development program or disadvantaged business enterprise.
Sure. The question is about our grants to agencies and donations community services. This is, in the Munis system, this is one account line with two codes, if you will. So we've answered the question according to the way Munis reports and the way our budget is set up. So the grants to agencies, most of you know that every year the City of Wilmington contributes dollars to Greater Wilmington Convention and Visitors Bureau. We've been making these contributions as a city since I started here in the office many years ago. Also, the county, Newcastle County contributes. And so the administration and the protocol has been that the $20,000 sits in the OED budget. So that's why you see it there, $20,000. The second item is a grant to True Access Capital. Many of you know or have worked with Van Hampton and his team. True Access Capital, formerly First State Community Loan Fund, is one of our leading CDFIs here in the city, and we work with True Access Capital every week. We use True Access Capital and WEDCO to help make SBA loans to small minority businesses. And so this year we're proposing a grant of $5,000 to True Access Capital. Many of you might remember that we used to have a second line under grants to agencies for the Wilmington Renaissance Corporation. That corporation has been disbanded and merged with another corporation. So that they have fallen off of the list this year, and we're substituting or we're adding on True Access Capital. The second part of this question has to do with our donation and community services lines. These lines, which are really dictated to us by accounting, this is where we fund requests from community organizations when we get invited to sponsor a community, a lunch, cleanup. You know, we probably get a couple of dozen every year, and we make modest sponsorships from this line. And then 1,500 of this is earmarked specifically for the minority business organizations and requests we get. And that concludes my answer to question 7.
All right. Could you provide an update on the amount of revenues generated collected directly as a result of the Office of Economic Development's efforts for fiscal year 2019 and fiscal year 2020 to date?
Yeah, we're going to answer this question in 2 or 3 parts. The first part, we're going to focus on the wage taxes generated by the strategic fund. You heard me state earlier that we've invested about $15 million into the fund since 2002. We're essentially spent down this year. And this slide shows you the returns from wage taxes collected from about 55 companies. This year, the number of wage taxes attributed to those firms is 11 million. And then you can see the total of approximately 100 million since 2002. And if you'll go to the next slide, please, we have a graphic display over time of the wage taxes generated. And essentially, you can see the growth in wage taxes as we invested that $15 million from 2002. And what's nice about this program is, you know, you say you attract a company like AAA, which came to the city back in '04 and was one of the first recipients of a strategic fund grant. Well, they're still in the city. They've long surpassed their contractual commitment to remain in the city, but yet they remain for other reasons. And so we continue to collect the wage taxes from AAA, and so it's reflected in this chart. Again, about 55 companies, and we're up to about an $11 million annual annuity. Next slide, please. Sean, okay. This slide is also a slide from our dashboard, our city stat dashboard, where we track our performance. This slide highlights some of our accomplishments in the physical development. Physical development being construction and land and building development. A couple of highlights here. Every time that we have a new building in our city, it creates short-term construction jobs, on average 12 to 16 months, and those jobs pay wage taxes, revenues to the general fund. More importantly, when there's a development project, it takes a piece of land, generally vacant or underutilized, and brings an active use to it. And although we have a property tax abatement program, after that, first off, not everybody takes advantage of that program, and that inures to the benefit of the city, but those projects that do, after the abatement wears off, we receive property taxes to the general fund. Also on this slide, you just see new residential units under development in the city. We've got about 1,500 in the pipeline, and approximately 500 of those were the result of a direct OED investment or an indirect investment. And it's worth just noting here that the Downtown Development District program, which is funded by the state of Delaware, the city of Wilmington was one of the first designees in the state program, and we remain the largest recipient of DDD funds, about $6 million this year, leveraging about $300 million in development. We're going to continue to be the leader in the state for that program, and it's a great example of how we can use other agencies' resources to bring economic development outcomes in the city. And Mr. Chair, we just have a couple of quick visual examples of some of the projects, and then we'll conclude the presentation. Here you have a rendering of 2000 Pennsylvania Avenue, 150 new residential units, 20,000 square feet of new commercial space, and this project will be completed and opening up here in the next couple of months. The next slide, this is a rendering of the River House. This $35 million project is the first of two phases to be built on A Street. It's about 100 units, and it's being developed by a party out of Baltimore. Next slide, please. This is a rendering of a project directly originated out of our office. It's approximately 90 new apartment units on a vacant piece of ground in the 200 block of Market Street. The land for this project was sold under an RFP to the development agency, and the land was sold from the Christina Gateway Corporation. Next slide, please. This is the new Hyatt Hotel on the Riverfront. Our role here at OED was we provided approximately $150,000 transfer from our infrastructure fund, which at the moment is zeroed out. This was done about a year and a half ago. The funds were used by our Department of Public Works to upgrade a key water line needed for the fire suppression system for this hotel. Next slide, please. This is a rendering of the Wetlands project. No explanation needed here. This is a great project. It's won many awards, participated in by our planning department, public works, and we're all looking forward to having this project open up here real real shortly. Next slide, please. This is just a rendering of a plan that our office sought WillMAPCO, which is the Regional Metropolitan Transportation Planning Organization. Several years ago, we asked WillMAPCO to consider doing a plan for the 7th Street Peninsula. This plan is completed and will allow the administration to go out and raise funding from Del.Dot CIP for the implementation of the plan, which includes the lifting of roads and the placement of new stormwater infrastructure on the peninsula to decrease flooding. Next slide, please. This is a new project this year. This is the Challenge Program Furniture Project that's located on the 7th Street Peninsula. Our office's role was to sell and consummate the land sale to the Challenge Program, which is going to build a new 10,000 square foot facility and create 20 new jobs in their line of work, which is custom furniture. They take their graduates from the Challenge Program and move them up to the Challenge Program Furniture Company, which will be located on this project. Next slide, please. Some of you remember when the city of Wilmington successfully annexed a small 2-acre portion of land on the northeast border of the city. Shown on this slide in the yellow box, that on the aerial, that's the portion of land that was annexed into the city. It was conjoined with another couple of acres, which is the green box. Our office was involved in that annexation, and then we worked with the mayor's office and the Public Works Department through a tricky pipe. There was a stormwater pipe that ran underneath the property that was essentially preventing the property from being developed. We worked together to have that pipe dealt with, and now a new company called Eastern Highway Specialists is going to be locating their business on this site. They're constructing a new facility there, and this company does bridge work all throughout the state and recently was highlighted as the company that worked on our 12th Street and Church Street Bridge. Next slide, please. That concludes my answer to question 8. Thank you.
Just a couple things. The last question, like all departments, is just an org chart for the department, and it's only one page, and then he also gives descriptions of a couple of positions that he has. I just also want to ask if there is anyone in the public that wants to speak, please raise your hand so we allot some time for you. Jeff, I want to just get back to what I mentioned earlier in the presentation. I'm not even going to try to characterize the pain that a lot of small businesses are going through today in dealing with this crisis. Would you be able to just briefly tell us some of the things that your department, the administration, is doing to try to assist small businesses get through this difficult time?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and thank you for asking. Since this crisis started, we've been open for business in the office. Our primary goal in the past few weeks is to do whatever we can to help the small business community with whatever issue they're having. First and foremost is helping them discern which of the federal CARES Act programs might be most appropriate for them. So many of you have heard about the PPP, but not so many of you have heard of the EIDL. The EIDL is also an SBA federal disaster loan program available to small businesses. Unfortunately, like the PPP, it's been exhausted. But what's unique about the EIDL is the $10,000 grant component. And in the early weeks of the crisis, Dwayne, Sean, and I helped many businesses fill out that application. We've done simple things by helping people figure out what their cost of goods sold is, to figuring out, what's the difference between their revenue. Just simple questions that don't take long to ask, but mean a great deal to small businesses that just, aren't used to navigating these types of applications. We've also recently been asked to help the state of Delaware with their HELP program. So the HELP program is the state of Delaware's subsidy program for the hospitality industry. And here in the next day, we're going to start to take a portion of the 400 statewide applications that have overwhelmed the State Division of Small Business. And our office is going to help underwrite and advance those applications. Some of those 400 applications are no doubt here in the city of Wilmington. And so we've been asked and have offered to help the Division of Small Business with that effort. Every day we get on a phone call, a daily 3 o'clock phone call with the SBA. That phone call is open to everybody on this call. It's open to the public, but Dwayne has been on it ever since the call was started. And that is the phone call where Mr. John Fleming and Mr. John Banks, our two Delaware SBA representatives, answer questions and talk about the state of the federal response to COVID for business. Additionally, we're on a call every week with all of the other economic development agencies throughout the state. The call is organized by the governor's office and by Kurt Foreman of the Delaware Prosperity Partnership. It takes place every Wednesday at 11:15. There's probably 50 people, 50 economic development professionals from up and down the state. And we participate in that every week. And lastly, our office meets daily at 4 o'clock using Zoom. The four of us get together, we touch base, we compare notes, and figuring out, whatever we can do to try and help our businesses. I know I've probably helped, have been on the phone with a couple of dozen businesses, and I know Dwayne has also been in direct contact with many businesses. We've tried to do as many press releases as we can. We're on the phone with accounting firms in the city. They're a good way to figure out and find out what our Wilmington businesses are facing. And we've heard from many of you, most recently Councilman Adams has been in touch with the office. And I just want to say that if any of you on City Council are getting phone calls from your businesses and you don't know how to help them, please direct them to our office. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Harley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that great presentation, Jeff. One, I want to say that thanks for the overview in terms of how your department has assisted with those different projects, the Wetlands and Hyatt and the Cooper project on Market Street. But I did not hear what you said about the project on A Street with the business from Baltimore. How did your department support or help that project?
Sure. This project is being built on a brownfield, and
Okay.
And our office worked to secure the brownfield certification with the developer. So without going into a lot of detail, there was a glitch in the way this property was transferred from the owner to the purchaser, the group out of Baltimore. And we were called on by the developer to meet with the head of the brownfield department at DNREC and iron that issue out. That's one example. A second example is there is some city infrastructure that runs underneath of this parcel. This is a public works series of pipes and managed under the water department, assets owned by the water department. and we had to secure an easement from the developer to make sure that the Public Works Department has access to that infrastructure in perpetuity. Additionally, this project will be eligible for a property tax abatement, which everybody on City Council and Finance Chair and City Administration and the Finance Department all helped pass this legislation this year. And I think there are a few other things we assisted the project with, but those are the primary ones that come to mind.
Thank you. That was good. You answered my question. And my second question is, for those communities that have been deemed as opportunity zones, does your department get involved with those different projects?
We do. First and foremost, our office assisted with the Opportunity Zone designation 2 years ago. And what I mean by that is, we worked with the mayor's office to identify the census tracts in the city of Wilmington that met the criteria. And then we responded to the governor's request to the mayor asking which census tract should be designated. So that's all old history, but it's worth pointing out that was really the value add from our office. Additionally, we created some marketing collaterals, which we can share with you. Probably some of you have seen them, and we market the opportunity zones on the website. When a particular project happens, Councilwoman, the particulars of the opportunity zone investment really don't involve government.
Mm-hmm.
The project, if it's in the zone, if it's eligible, the project and the attorneys that are representing the project work with the IRS to ensure that the designation can be honored, which then leads to the private sector putting up the cash for the project to move forward. We don't really get involved in that part of the program.
Understood. And my last comment is thank you to you and your department for your assistance in helping the small businesses. I have been directing them to different links on the web, the Small Business Association. So I'm glad to know that your department has been assisting with questions as well. So that was good information. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you to all City Council for all the support you've given us over the years.
I have another question. Councilmember Dixon?
Yes, thank you. So one, I do want to say, Director Flynn, thank you for stepping up to help out with your office for all the small business components. I know I've gotten calls and things too regarding either businesses who have said that because the funding opportunities have come in late, that they've had to lay off a lot more people than they anticipated previously, or haven't been able to get a chance to apply for the PPP or the economic injury disaster loan before they were able to close. I'm glad to see that Congress passed an additional money to help recently. But that's definitely something that people are continuously trying to find funding for. So I'm hoping that the funding goes to the right places this time. Have you heard about any businesses that are unable to open that you guys heard about already in the city?
That are unable to open.
So because of the COVID crisis, they're unable to open their doors back up for business?
Well, we're aware of certainly of the industry codes that are deemed essential by the governor's office, and we're definitely aware of many businesses that are not open because they're not deemed essential or they can't provide a product or a service in a takeout manner. I will say personally, I've been pleased to see as the number of businesses that are not necessarily essential open in some way to deliver a product and service and generate revenue. And I know I wish there were more opportunities for that, but I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, I'm just saying, so I heard that I had a couple of people call me and say that because of the crisis and they had to lay off so many people, there's no way for them to rehire those individuals and reopen for business.
I'm sorry. I didn't understand your original question.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to know if there was any businesses that you guys know that may not be able to reopen due to having to close their business and not be able to reopen.
Sure. Councilwoman Dixon, I'll step in. I haven't heard, I've spoken to probably well over 30 businesses in the last 2 weeks, either spoken to directly or emailed directly with them. I have not heard anyone say that they've closed for good yet, which is, I think, is the base for your question. I have not. I have spoken to business owners, I should say, that are on the brink, right? And I think that's safe to say that many, not just in our community, in our city, but across this nation, that are really, a couple of weeks really away, right? There's a very important metric in play here for any business, and that's days cash on hand, right? Mm-hmm. And that cash on hand is essentially the sum of several other numbers, how they move, receivables, payables, expenses, et cetera. But the point here is how much money do they have on hand, cash, liquid, available to keep them afloat through crises, right? And that's a very important metric when we look at the performance and the viability, long-term viability of any company. As you might imagine, there are a lot of small businesses that maybe don't understand that metric as well as they maybe should. And so that's obviously presenting quite the challenge, even particularly in this crisis environment, right? So when I talk to businesses, I try to talk to them about that first and foremost. What kind of liquid do they have available and where? I think I want to also second and double down on our director's point around, response to COVID. So a big part of what we're doing is advisory services on these calls. So not just how to navigate the programs, but how is the program and what programs are really best for them based on the type of business they're running and how liquid they may or may not be. So that's just another level of advisory services that we try to provide while on these calls. I can tell you this morning, I walked into a voicemail, a business owner almost on tears in the voicemail, right? And I called her back immediately and really walked her through some of the options, whether that be the hospitality loan program at the state level, or for that matter, to give her some basic information about the federal programs that are beginning to hopefully be green lighted again here at the end of the week. I'm happy that she got off the phone call, felt empowered, right, to be able to try to navigate what's best for her. To answer your question succinctly, no, I have not heard directly that businesses have closed for good yet. It would not surprise me, though, that is a very real possibility for businesses. You raised something else very lastly around, particularly minority-owned businesses, right, getting access to those federal programs. One of the things that we've seen negotiated in this particular, this next round of federal programs is that there's upwards of $50 billion being directed towards community development financial institutions like True Access Capital, for example, right? That is a subset of the larger dollar amount that is going out to support the EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and the Paycheck Protection Program. So we're talking upwards of $50 billion directed towards CDFIs. Why CDFIs? Because they have that relationship more than likely with the smaller business owner that's typical and that we'll see in our community, for example, in our city. And it's also a very important point that that the smaller businesses may not have that direct relationship, right, with a Wells Fargo or larger bank, for example, any of the, not to call out Wells Fargo, but the point I'm making is that a larger institution, right? So that's very important. I'm happy to see that was included in this round.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you for your comments. We're going to have to close out because we have another hearing at 5:30. I want to thank you for answering all our questions in-depth wise, and I can offer you, gentlemen, anytime you want to provide updates or new programs, or just let us know some issues you have. You're more than welcome to come to the Finance and Economic Development Committee and do that. As you know, we meet the first Monday of the month. But once again, thank you for a good presentation. We're going to break for a couple of minutes now, and then at 5:30, we're going to come back and hear from the Department of Parks and Recreation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
All right, let me try this again. Good evening and welcome back to this session of Wilmington City Council's Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting. It is Wednesday, April 22nd. We're in the middle of a series of budget hearings for the fiscal year 2021 budget presented by Mayor Michael Brzezicki. We just heard from the Mayor's Office of Economic Development, and next we're going to hear from the Department of Parks and Recreation. Just a couple of notes. As you know, the budget was prepared prior to the COVID-19 crisis. In the original budget, there is no tax increase, no increase in water sewer fees. We will hear from some of the department directors, though, of other budget lines that they're looking to cut in this fiscal year 21 budget. So we most likely will be offering a substitute ordinance when we come to voting time at the end of May, which we have to do by code. We have to pass the balanced budget. We will probably most likely also revisit this budget in the fall sometime once we realize the impacts of the COVID-19 crisis. But I will tell you, the administration and council will aggressively pursue any federal dollars coming into the state or into Newcastle County so that the city of Wilmington gets its fair share. We're going to follow the same format. First, we're going to hear from the Office of Management and Budget with a brief overview of the changes in this year's budget from last year. We will have a presentation by the director, and then we will jump right into questions and answers. We've allotted 90 minutes for this hearing. I'm going to ask council members once again to keep all their questions to budgetary matters. Any programmatic or constituent issues should be addressed in a different forum. For those people, citizens of the city of Wilmington that are watching or listening in, if you would like to make comment, there will be a period of time at the end of the hearing when you will have 3 minutes to comment on the budget we're discussing, that of Parks and Recreation. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the Office of Management. Oh, first I want to acknowledge the council members that are with us presently. We have President Hanifa Shabazz. We have council member for the 1st District, Linda Gray. Council member for the 3rd District, Zanthia Oliver. Council member for the 4th District, Michelle Harley. Council member from the 7th District, Chris Johnson. We have 2 at-large members, ChairCiro Adams and Rashima Dixon. And we are also joined by the Chief of Staff for the Mayor's Office, Tandy Washington, and Chief of Staff for City Council, Michelle Bass Knight. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the Office of Management and Budget.
Good afternoon, Chairman Freel and council members. All right, so before we begin, just a reminder that the budget details that I'm presenting here are based on the original proposed budget, which was developed prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Director Kelly will be discussing revisions during his presentation. And do we have the PowerPoint up? Great, thank you. All right, so the FY2021 general fund budget for the Department of Parks and Recreation is $8.9 million, which is down nearly $136,000 or about 1.5% from the FY2020 budget. Of that, personal services are up nearly $25,000 or 0.5%. Additionally, material, supplies, and equipment is up $27,000 or about 1.8%. Total staffing across all funds is 41 FTEs, 40.6 of which are in the general fund. And this is unchanged from FY2020. Next slide. Okay, so to drill down a bit further on the major funding changes for FY21, let's begin with personal services. For FY21, we've included a placeholder 2% COLA. Combined with steps and related changes, this results in an additional cost of almost $60,000. Offsetting these salary increases are nearly $32,000 in net benefit savings. So the budget also includes 2 position changes. The deletion of a vacant labor foreman 1 for a savings of nearly $69,000, and the addition of a labor foreman 2 at an additional cost of nearly $80,000. This has no net impact on total FTEs. All right, moving on to MS&E changes, the largest of which are all in the William Hicks Anderson Community Center. So first, $50,000 has been added to contracted maintenance to maintain newly installed equipment following the center's renovation. And second, given improvements to the center's HVAC system, as well as the ongoing trend of lower overall electricity usage by the department, the electricity line has been reduced by $35,000. And third, $25,000 in consultants costs have been moved from the admin division to Hicks Anderson to provide youth family therapy services. And lastly, overall debt service has decreased by nearly $243,000. This is due to savings from the proposed refinancing of existing debt. Okay, this concludes my summary of the Department of Parks and Recreation's FY 2021 budget. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them now.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, did you have any opening remarks or introductions before we get started? Mr. Kelly?
Good afternoon. I'm here today joined by Wayne Jefferson, Deputy Director, and a few other people in the room. We're trying to practice the social distancing as best we can. And we're here live from beautiful downtown Southbridge. But I want to give a little overview of the department. The mission of the Department of Parks and Recreation is to provide comprehensive and quality programming that supports the holistic wellness of city residents by offering recreational, social, cultural, employment, and educational opportunities for all city residents, regardless of age or physical barriers. The priorities for myself is to increase the use of technology within the department, to make sure we have quality programs and also create a standard of care for maintenance. A couple of performance measures we have is going back is to make sure that 50% of all of our recreation programs utilize technology to track participants and other programs that we do. For youth and families, it's trying to increase the number of non-governmental jobs for young people who are working by 20%. And with Hicks Anderson, we're trying to make sure that the programs that we offer there have about a 25% increase in utilization. And finally, maintenance, the mayor is one of his top performance measures to make sure I get the grass cut every 7 days. So that's just kind of a quick overview of the department. If you like, we can go right into the questions, whatever is easiest to do.
Kevin, as we mentioned, this budget was proposed before the crisis. Could you just talk about some of the budget lines that you're looking at for additional cuts, if necessary, due to the COVID-19 pandemic?
And if I would just like to back up for 1 second, I'll answer that question. But the question was, what divisions have been impacted by COVID-19? Really, the entire department is, except for really the food program and really in maintenance as well, has been impacted. The COVID-19 has shut down all of our recreational programs. We had to cut our leagues early. We're not running any spring sports. We had to stop our annual recognition for all the young people. The YCD program is still going. The application stopped on Saturday. We have some maintenance people that are out because of COVID-19. We're doing our best to maintain the parks. But the one shining light within the department is the food program. Once we got notification that schools were closed, we ramped up our food program under leadership of Nicole Torrance and Victoria Fuentes Cox. And I'm pleased to report since March 17th, we have distributed 100,000 meals in the city of Wilmington. Right? We're taking care of the people every day. Our motto is lunch is rock. Mine is we have to feed the future. So with all going on, we also know that COVID-19 is going to impact our budget. So when I looked at our budget, I tried to look at some programs and some reductions that will not really impact services that much. So the first one is the Arts in the Park program in Delaware Nature Society. Currently, there's about $50,000 for both of those programs. In the Arts in the Park, I would eliminate the evening program where we have concerts in the park. The mayor is kind of have a hold on any activities above 100 people. So we would probably not do those this summer. Delaware Nature Society, we have a couple of dollars left in our budget that would be able to do that. Camp Barns, we have 4 different times that we go to Camp Barns a year. We take about 40 kids to Camp Barns. This would allow us to still have 2 trips to Camp Barns, but again, we're not sure with social distancing whether we'll be able to put 40 young people in the bunks where we have them to go on a bus trip down to Camp Barnes. Some consultants, we have some consultants that are both within Parks and Rec in the administration. I have a consultant for $25,000 that we would remove. There's another consultant that's in Recreation Department that does some reviews of programs that we reduce, and one or two other small ones. The Hicks Building Services, and some of these are duplicative where you'll see we're asking for the money, but we also realize maybe we don't need them. In Hicks, that would be the contract with the company that oversees the city-county building, asset management, thank you, Wayne, to be able to come in and help us manage some of the day-to-day operations of Hicks with the HVAC system, the pool, and other things. In Hicks, we have a few vacant LSE positions. We have an outreach worker, summer camp director, and a rec specialist that are vacant. We believe that the existing program director can fill in that void with that program. It'll be very minimum impact. In recreation, we have some scorekeepers to keep score of games. We're trying to see if we can get volunteers to do that. The evening and summer and winter programs are impacted by the COVID. We would be reducing the number of parks opening in the summer at evening, probably from 5 to 2. We would also be adjusting some of the summer workers that we have. And the winter program last year, I think we ran about 10 winter recreation sites. They were staffed by a variety of LSEs, but some of them are not effective, and we would probably get down to about 5 to 6 different sites throughout the city. Maintenance, temporary agencies, the biggest group of expenditures in maintenance is temp agencies. We would reduce the number of temps who kind of work from the fall through the winter. That's kind of our off season. But we would take a $50,000 reduction there. In youth and families, currently the YCD program is funded for 8 months. We would cut 2 weeks of funding off of that. That would still allow the 400 something, over 450 people we'd like to work for 6 weeks in that program. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. And then some other temporary salary reductions. The miscellaneous MSCs are just parts, supplies, T-shirts, trophies throughout the department that we feel that we can, as I say, take a haircut and reduce some of those items. The total of all are about $525,000.
Just let me say congratulations to your entire department for the food program. That's a pretty impressive number of meals.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Stop by one morning. It's a very interesting way of doing things, but everybody works as a team and we get the job done.
I actually have seen them out there in my travels. So, President Shabazz, do you have your hand up? President Shabazz?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Great job on the food program, and thank you for making sure our children in the city of Wilmington are fed with your efforts. One other question, in the reduction, where in which line does the safe havens, does that affect the safe havens?
So the safe havens are the consultant line. We only have one safe haven, President Shabazz, that we fund, which is the program at YEP. And in consultation with the mayor and the chief of staff, we felt that was not a program we wanted to cut. So that safe haven that's in YEP in the 6th district will continue. All the other safe haven programs are funded by the state of Delaware.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Harley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Kelly, real quick question before you move forward. I noticed on slide 4 where you had a reduction in electricity. How, and pray tell, did you get a reduction in electricity?
We don't turn the lights on, and we have them LED lights. It's like at home, Councilmember Harley. I come in and turn the lights off. To be honest, a couple things. One, probably the line had a little bit more money than it needed. But you've got to remember, with the renovations, with your help and all the other council members, we were able to put all new LED lights in Hicks. So the energy usage is down. The last place I have is the gym and the pool to replace them with LED lights. But the usage has been down through some efficiencies and getting some newer equipment in there. So that's why we're able to reduce the electric budget.
That's really awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
let's go ahead and move forward. Discuss any current vacant positions you have and whether you plan on filling them.
I have a labor foreman 2 position that has been vacant since October, and it's proposed to be deleted in the 21 budget.
Discuss any proposed changes to positions, new positions, upgrades, title changes, anything?
Right, so we're proposing to delete the labor foreman 1 and add a labor foreman 2. Right now, I have 6 or 7 different workers within the Parks Department who report directly to one of the to direct Superintendent Williams or 2 people underneath of him. I'm trying to create like a tech unit to put people who have similar job skills together and have them report to a labor foreman rather than directly to a supervisor.
Okay. Discuss the planned use of 1.2 million budgeted in temporary salaries.
So, just to go through it at a very high level, these are all limited service employees in the administration. It helps me with some support for the capital budget. In recreation, they are the individuals who run the pools, the parks, the games, and all the items that support the recreation division. Hicks Anderson Community Center is those individuals who work in the center every day to help run it. Youth and Families, the large portion, that's probably $400,000 to $450,000, is for the YCD program, the summer youth program, but also has some educational employment people that we have, the Youth Leadership Corps, and a few other programs within there. But all those really support the programs of the city of Wilmington.
Kev, can you just talk, next series is about the summer youth jobs.
Sure.
That budgeted, what other grants you're expecting corporations to help out?
So in the proposed budget is the 225 youth workers, which would be 360,000, some interns, some 10 work leaders that covers the additional costs from DOL, and some other the minimum wage. So right now we want to ensure that all young people working make $10 an hour. We began that with our year-round program, so there's some costs for that. But the 360 now, that was for eight weeks. If the proposals go through, it would now be for 6 weeks. But all told, we expect to hire 225 people with the city funds, and their ages 14 to 21. So the next is the grants. So we received $75,000 from the Bank of Delaware. They've been very supportive of this endeavor for years. It's a $15,000 increase from last year. And then the Department of Labor, which funds us for 2 programs, the summer and the all year long program, they're putting in about $204,000. And of that, there's about 25 people we will hire from outside the city and 128 from the city. And they're income eligible positions. There's some income limitations on those. And then it says, question number 4C. So Bank of America provided $65,000 and $75,000. They're the only real corporation that's directly sponsoring jobs for us.
Okay, and the last part, could you just touch whether there was any funding for the youth leadership program?
The youth leadership program, there's $23,500 for the director's salary, and about $7,000 we provide for food and clothing for the Wilmington Youth Leadership Program.
Councilmember Johnson, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Director Kelly, I definitely appreciate the work your department has been doing, especially around the youth programming. But just kind of looking at the youth summer program, I guess it was started in June. Are there plans right now that the model could be shifted to online, maybe a coding job or some kind of computer-oriented jobs if the kids can't go on site? Because I would hate to see the loss of jobs if they actually can't physically go to the sites and work.
Well, it's a great question. We had a conference call today with Department of Labor about some of the challenges us in the county face. We're looking to start the program June 29th, I believe it is, and run it for 6 weeks. So it more or less run, or for 5 weeks, excuse me, for the whole summer, for the month of July. We've been reaching out to potential work sites to see if the ones from last year are willing to come back to do that. The opportunities that you talked about, there's a partnership that we're going to be doing with the warehouse who's applying for some grants through the state of Delaware to be able to hire young people to do coding, and especially female coders that we're looking to hire. The ability to be able to work off site for the summer is challenging. We did get approval for some young people to possibly work from home. There are some programs where young people can work from home. But to have everybody work remotely and things like that will be a challenge. But the coding is something we have been looking into.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Harley, do you have a follow-up question?
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I think I heard Director Kelly mention Director of Youth Leadership salary. Are you talking about the director for the Youth Commission or director for the summer youth?
For the Youth Commission.
And does that salary, is that salary for the current salary and or the current salary with an increase?
Current salary, it's budget, the current budgeted salary. Remember, it's an LSE position, so it's not a full-time position. This is a limited service employee.
Understood, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Discuss the planned use of $414,000 budgeted professional fees for consultants and temporary agency costs. And at the conclusion of that, if you could provide us a list of the safe haven sites.
So within there, again, some of these numbers have been adjusted by the reduction. So the maintenance really is for the temporary employees that we hire. We hire 31 temps to be able to work at various times through the summer. We'll start them and run them from July to September and take off for October, probably through March. We have some others that come in, and then from April, but that funds about 31 temps that we use an integrity staffing for. The recreation is for to pay for the lifeguards, the evaluations, and the YEP program. I referred to that earlier. The $22,500 that we have a safe haven, that's included in that number, plus the evaluation component to review our recreation, our winter recreation basketball league, and some small other money. The money's in for youth and family is for SAT prep. We run 4 SAT prep sessions a year. And then in Wilmington Hicks Anderson Center, that was some money, $25,000 that was transferred from the administration unit to hopefully hire a family services counselor, therapist counselor for Hicks. But if the COVID reductions are taking place, that'll impact all of these items.
The list of safe haven sites.
Safe haven sites are on the next page. As I said, the only one that the city of Wilmington funds is the YEP program, the last one. The rest are all funded by the state of Delaware Kids Department. Now we work collectively with all of those groups. We usually have young people working there and we meet on a regular basis, but they're the listing of all the safe haven sites. And they're usually funded from September through December, but we'll see with the FY21 state budget, whether they'll continue to be funded that long.
So all these sites for this summer would be in the fiscal year 21 budget for the state?
Yes, there'll be there's some money left over. Here's what I'd like to do. Let me get you an update to find out exactly what the funding is for the safe havens and get that back to the committee.
Okay. And you haven't had any word from any state officials about the 21 funding, have you?
No, I've not heard anything at all about any adjustments to the budget, but you know, they're having some fiscal challenges just like we are.
Yes, they are. Okay. Could you talk a little bit about the budgetary costs for all the city pools and also provide a list of locations for the spray parks?
So the city pools are listed, and again, we're looking to open up for 6 weeks this year, the same week of June, but we understand that the COVID-19 could seriously impact our ability to open pools this summer with social distancing, if that's still in effect, and large crowds of individuals being at pools. We're not sure what they'll really do, but we're moving forward with having the pools open. These are the 5 pools that we operate, and what the costs that are involved for each one of those. And then I think your next question was where the spray park's at.
Correct.
So they're at Father Tucker, Woodlawn, Helen Chambers, Brown, Judy Johnson, Mack, and Kosciuszko. The one at Woodlawn and Mack are being replaced. The one at Woodlawn is done. The one at Mack will be started on within another week or two. And we're working on trying to identify some funds that would help fix the spray park at Judy Johnson and Brown Park. I think Brown Park, we may have some funding from Representative Bolden and Senator Lockman for that spray park. But Judy Johnson, we may be seeking some funding to repair it.
Okay. Discuss the 286,000 budgeted miscellaneous services.
I mean, these are mostly, you know, for us, they're repairs to the building. Some of these are duplicative with the other numbers. For maintenance, it's repairs to different parts and equipment that we have to do. Recreation are just some activities. In Hicks, that's the $50,000 for the hiring the individuals to help us with the building maintenance. The security contract is in there for the security guard and emergency repairs. And then youth and families, that dollar includes some funding for Camp Barnes.
Okay. Discuss the 177,000 budget miscellaneous materials, supplies, parts, and equipment line.
You know, most of these in maintenance, the largest portion of that money in the 76 is for mulch and landscaping and just other miscellaneous parts. Recreation, it's trophies, t-shirts, food that we procure, and t-shirts for individuals. The Hicks number, I think, I'll get back to Marcia. I think that number is a little inaccurate. That's just supplies that we need for Hicks Anderson, and the same for youth and families. They're just miscellaneous parts and equipment that we buy for the operations of each of those divisions.
Okay. Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Gray. We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'd like to compliment Commissioner Kelly with all the work he's done during the COVID and feeding the community and feeding all our kids, and also to him and to his department. But I'd like to address the maintenance, the parks part of your department. I don't have it on my screen now, but this maintenance you said is being used for maintenance of parks, mulch, other things like that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I've been discussing for a year with you maintenance of the barriers between, I think it is Tatnall and Washington Street on Lee Boulevard. I mean, that's a main corridor. And I don't think they've been maintained for 20 years. So can that be part of your maintenance budget to take care of that?
Yes, and you've been on me very regularly about it every time I see you. We've made some corrections, but not enough. I really think that what needs to happen with the majority of those barriers is to take them out, because some of them don't serve any purpose. The ones that are near the storm basins really need to be fixed and corrected. I asked Mr. Williams to go back over again recently about getting them done. You've been very patient, and I haven't addressed your need. I'll be very honest with you. So I've got to get over and get that straightened out once and for all with you. But for those watching, we're talking about Matson Run, the area around Matson Run, where there's a barricade that prevents people from getting into Matson Run, and more importantly, going down where some of the big storm drains are.
But specifically from Washington Street down to Tatnall in front of the Department of Labor. Well, thank you very much for your future attention soon to this matter. Thank you.
Councilmember Oliver. Councilmember Oliver.
Yes, how you doing? Can you?
We can hear you.
I can hear you. Now I can see you. There we go.
Now we can't hear you. Can't hear you.
I'm ready. Can you hear me?
There you go. You're good now. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, how's everybody doing? First, Commissioner, I wanted to thank you for the great work your staff did yesterday with assisting with us with our event. It really turned out very well. And thanks to Parks and Recreation for being on time as usual. I'd like to thank you and Wayne Jefferson. I just wanted to say that first. But secondly, I had a question in reference to I see the parks that were listed. I didn't see anything for the park over 11th Street Bridge that we discussed with Carla about.
Johnston Park.
Correct.
So what we're going to do with Johnston Park, I met over there with the lady at all. You know, unfortunately, my capital dollars are gone. I have very little money left to try and take care of some existing projects. Hopefully we'll go to the bond market in the fall.
Okay.
But the state allows us to apply for 3 grants every year for $100,000 to help that needs to be matched by other funding sources. So I'll be coming to probably before council. I think in the middle of May, we have a meeting where I'll be asking the state for a $100,000 grant for Johnston Park. I think that will help us at least get some funding to be able to start some renovations for that park.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to know what to say when she gives me a call, because I know she wants me to follow up on it. Thanks a lot.
I would glad to give me a call as well.
Okay, that's all I had the question for. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Harley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Kelly, what about Christina Park? I know for 2 years, we've been talking about 2 things, you know, one, the risk factor as it relates to the pier. And then I have been made aware of the beautification part of it would take place when you go to the bond market, I guess the next year. So I guess I'm just asking, is that included in this 76,000?
Yeah, the 76,000 is just miscellaneous things that we need to do every day. You know, your pier is a very large capital item that when we go to the bond bill, I'll have some money for it. But you know, of the 3 bites of the apple, Councilmember Oliver got one, and you're going to get one too, because I'm going to put in a grant for $100,000 for Christina Park. Separate from the boardwalk, as I call it, the park does need some enhancements. It's a very well-used park. I call it the Schwinn Park. All the old heads and the OGs got their bikes there every day, having a good time. And they need a nice park to be able to be in. The park has been around for a while, but I'm going to put in a grant for $100,000. That'll at least give us some money to be able to match and try and get a plan to try and make that park really a great, with the boardwalk, with the pavilion and the baseball field and everything else, and bring it back to life.
I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate your sentiments as well as mine, as it relates to who enjoys that park, and they're there year after year, the same people. And like I had shared with you, and we did the walkthrough together, you know, it's a matter of both a safety situation and as well as an opportunity for beautification. So thank you. Now, this grant that you're talking about, when do you typically apply for that?
So we have to send a letter in May to DNREC and indicating the parks that we want to be able to apply for. Usually then in late summer, early fall, we'll get an award. We've been very successful, you know, with those grants. This year, we've got one for East Lake, Sixton Madison. There's one other park off the top of my head that I can't remember. Oh, the other one is 100,000 for Kirkwood. So we have those 3 parks that we're working on, but we've been getting those grants pretty successfully. So hopefully we'll be able to get that one for Christine as well.
So, and my last question is this: so there's nothing that's going to take place on that pier between now and the time that you apply for the grant?
Correct. As I said, our capital dollars are dwindling. I just got hit with something with Cruise Park that I have to take care of, and a few other parks that we're trying to resolve. But if something changes, I'd be glad to discuss it. I still believe we would need some money from the state, would be very helpful to help make those dollars stretch a little bit further. I mean, from the state bond bill as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, discuss the planned use of 134,000 budget rentals and contracted maintenance account lines.
So in maintenance, it's, you know, we have the GPS monitoring. We have some funds that council put a little while ago to be able to do some plumbing work on our fountains. You know, we still have a lot of old fountains. One of our biggest expenditures of $35,000 is porta potties. we've got to have them around the city. I think we need to lock most of them up because sometimes they just become ways for people to do illegal activities. In recreation, we don't have the porta potties anymore. We have the facility rentals. That's for us to be able to use the gyms for their winter recreation programs, the rented tables and chairs when council members need those for different events, and to do some training for the pools. At Hicks, it's mostly to help with the interior and exterior repairs of that building. And in youth and families, it's just some bus rentals for summer camp and for some facility use for the enrichment camp at the school that we're using there.
Okay. Discuss the planned use of $132,000 in overtime.
The overtime budget in maintenance, a large portion of that maintenance overtime is for special events. When we've got to roll the bandstand wagon out for different events, we're using overtime because it's on the weekends or after hours. And I would say probably 70% of that is for that purpose. That will probably change in light of COVID. I'm not sure how much use we'll have of the bandstand going forward for the summer. Recreation is just for a couple staff people who work a little overtime from time to time, and Hicks just for 1 or 2 staff people, I believe, there who work overtime.
Okay, discuss the planned use of $51,000 budgeted for community activities. And you could also talk about the outreach for your summer arts and your in the parks and your summer city cinema programs.
The Arts in the Park program, again, it's for 2 components. It's a daytime component. We contract with the Grand Opera House where they come to a couple different parks in the city a few days a week and do some outreach. This week, one of the things we wanted to do is have a few different theatrical plays in a few different parks, especially at Helen Chambers, where for 2 weeks, we would take a group of young people, kind of have them be ready to do a little play, and that play would be done in a park. And then the evening portion is where we're doing the music at 6 or 7 different parks like Kirkwood, 4th and Rodney, Stapler, the Parkway, and so forth. And then in Delaware Nature Society, that's where we take some young people from the camp at Camp Hope at Hicks to go to Delaware Nature Society for them to learn a little bit about nature. And the summer cinema is the movies in the park program, where we've got to pay for the licensing fee for all the movies that we show. And then the next portion of that is how we do it. We really need, we have advertising for the programs, but in many of the programs in the Parks Department, we need to do a better job of getting surveys and finding out what people think before they take part in a program and what they think afterwards. One of probably the most successful ones that we do, not to digress, is the college tour, where the young people are really happy to do that. But this Arts in the Park program, we need to probably measure a little bit better for its effectiveness. And I've worked more closely with Tina Betts from Cultural Affairs this year about how to make the program work better.
I just want to remind any of our viewers, if they do want to make comment at the end of the presentation, they should go ahead and raise their hand now so we can acknowledge them and give them their 3 minutes for public comment. The last question we have: discuss fiscal year 21 projected grant funds from the state of Delaware for the evening youth feeding program.
So the let's see. Child adult care food program. We expect to get a reimbursement of $488,277 that pays for our staff, the contract that we have for the vendor to be able to deliver the meals. And there's also the summer feeding program. We probably will provide that to council. That'll be starting. That really feeds young people for the summer. Right now, currently, we're in the summer program. We moved that up.
And once again, Kevin, on these programs where you receive some state funding, you haven't gotten any word yet that they might be cut in fiscal year 2021?
No, these are administered by the state council member Freel, but paid for by the federal government. I mean, reimbursed. We're reimbursed by the federal government. So the state kind of administers the program, but the federal Department of Agriculture has done it. My gut is that, if I had more capacity, I could give out 10,000 meals a day. I don't really think this one will be cut in light of all the needs for the food that we're going. We've been partnering with the food bank for a couple of different giveaways as well, but there is a huge need now for food in this city.
Okay. Like the other departments, the last page is his organizational chart, broken down into his 4 divisions.
Yeah, but just as, the 4 divisions of 41 people, I want to thank my staff, here, they're listening, we do an excellent job with a little bit of resources that we have. We're trying to rethink every day of how to address the needs of young people, their parents, their grandparents, and everyone else in the city. But you can see the org chart that's listed here for the 4 divisions that I have, and Ms. Ferguson, who keeps us all straight every day, Katrina Woody, who does the fiscal, and myself, and Mr. Jefferson, who keeps me straight, which is a full-time job, brother, you know that.
Once again, I know I want to thank you and your whole team, because I do think the parks are looking much better. And anytime I've had individual issues, you folks have always been very responsive. So I appreciate that. I'm not seeing any questions or any comments from the public. I'm not seeing any questions from council members. So this will conclude our hearing for the Department of Parks and Recreation. I thank you guys for coming in and answering all our questions and helping prepare us for as we try to deal with this crisis situation.
Thank you, Councilmember Freel. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I did want to go ahead and make the announcement. We do have another budget hearing tomorrow night. It'll be the 3rd one of this week. We will start at 4 o'clock with the Audit Department. At 4:45, we will do the Human Resource Department. And then at 6:30, we will have the Law Department. On Monday, April 27th, we will start at 4 o'clock, but we have, I believe, 3 pieces of legislation that we will have to review in committee and vote out for future council meetings. Then we will hear the budget for the Finance Department and the Office of Information Technology. One week from tonight, Wednesday, April 29th, we will hear from the Planning and Development Department and the Public Works Department. And then on Monday, May 4th, we will have our, which we do on an annual basis, we will have our presentation of the Water Sewer Fund and their 6-year financial plan. And that, once again, is presented from Public Works. So I thank all my council members, my colleague, for participating this evening, and for those in the public who have viewed these hearings, much appreciated. And this concludes this meeting of Wilmington City Council's Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.